Part 1. The Fragility of the Self. You wake up in a room you do not recognize. The walls are padded, the light is dim. You try to stand up, but your legs are weak. They feel like rubber. You try to speak, but your tongue feels too big for your mouth. A man in a white coat enters the room. He smiles at you. He looks kind. He looks like a grandfather. You ask him, "Where am I? Who am I?" He doesn't answer your question. Instead, he puts a helmet on your head. He straps your wrists to the chair. He presses a button, and a voice starts playing in your ears. It is your own voice, but it sounds strange, distorted. It repeats a single phrase over and over again. You are nobody, you are nothing, you are a blank page. You scream, you beg him to stop. But he doesn't stop. He turns the volume up. And he keeps it playing for 16 hours a day, for weeks, until you believe it. You think this is a scene from a dystopian horror movie. You think this is fiction written by George Orwell. It is not. This happened to a woman named Velma Orlikow in 1956. It happened to a man named Robert Logie. It happened to hundreds of innocent people who walked into a hospital seeking help for anxiety and walked into a government-funded nightmare. You believe your mind is a fortress. You believe that your memories, your childhood, your loves, your fears are permanent. You are wrong. Your memory is not a stone tablet. It is a magnetic tape. And with the right combination of electricity, drugs, and repetition, I can run a magnet over that tape and erase you completely. I can delete your soul. Tonight, we are opening the darkest file in the history of the CIA. We are going to explore the scientific attempt to enslave the human will. We are going to meet the black sorcerer who funded it and the mad doctor who executed it. Welcome to the true story of Project MKUltra and the Allan Memorial Institute. Welcome to the anatomy of mind control. Part 2. The Paranoia, the Cold War Context. To understand how a democratic government could authorize the torture of its own citizens, you have to understand the smell of fear in 1953. The world was divided. The Iron Curtain had fallen. The nuclear age had begun. But the Americans were not afraid of Soviet bombs. They were afraid of Soviet minds. During the Korean War, something terrifying happened. American pilots were shot down and captured. When they were put on camera by their captors, they didn't act like soldiers. They acted like zombies. They looked into the lens with dead eyes and denounced the United States. They confessed to using biological weapons. They praised communism. The American public was shocked. How could loyal soldiers turn against their country so quickly? The CIA director, Allen Dulles, had a theory. He believed the Soviets had discovered a secret weapon. A truth drug. A technique for brainwashing that could scrub a man's mind and reprogram him like a machine. Dulles was a man who believed the ends justified the means. He called a meeting with his top strategists. He said, "If they have this weapon, we must have it too, and we must have it first." He didn't want to just interrogate spies. He wanted to create a Manchurian Candidate. He wanted to be able to take a normal man, program him to be an assassin, send him to kill a foreign leader, and then have him forget he ever did it. The perfect crime, the perfect soldier. On April 13, 1953, Dulles signed a secret order. He created a project with a cryptonym that would become legendary. MK stood for the Technical Services Staff. Ultra stood for the highest level of classification. Project MKUltra was born. It was not just one experiment. It was an octopus with 149 subprojects. It involved 44 universities, 15 research foundations, 12 hospitals, 3 prisons. And it was all illegal. It was a war on the human mind, fought in the shadows. Part 3. The black sorcerer Sidney Gottlieb. Every nightmare needs an architect. For MKUltra, that man was Sidney Gottlieb. They called him the Black Sorcerer or the Dirty Trickster. He was the head of the CIA's chemical division. He was a strange paradox. He lived in a cabin in the woods. He drank goat's milk. He practiced Buddhism. He taught folk dancing. But by day, he was developing poisons to kill Fidel Castro and pills to drive people insane. Gottlieb was obsessed with LSD, lysergic acid diethylamide. In the 50s, LSD was a new mysterious compound. Gottlieb believed it was the key to unlocking the mind. He started buying the world's entire supply of LSD. He experimented on everyone. He gave it to prisoners. He gave it to prostitutes. He gave it to his own colleagues without telling them. Imagine sitting at a boring CIA meeting, drinking your coffee, and suddenly the walls start melting. Gottlieb would sit in the corner with a notebook, watching you panic, taking notes. He thought it was funny. But LSD was unpredictable. It made people hallucinate, but it didn't make them obedient. Gottlieb realized that drugs alone were not enough. He needed something more brutal. He needed a way to break the structure of the personality itself. He needed a doctor who was willing to cross the line that separates medicine from torture. He found him in Montreal, Canada. Dr. Ewen Cameron. Part 4. The God Complex. Dr. Ewen Cameron. Dr. Ewen Cameron was a titan. He was 6 feet 4 inches tall. He had blue eyes that seemed to look right through you. He was the president of the American Psychiatric Association, the first president of the World Psychiatric Association. He was the most respected psychiatrist in North America. But he had a secret. He hated talk therapy. He believed that Freud was a waste of time. He believed that mental illness, schizophrenia, depression, anxiety, was a hardware problem. He believed the brain developed faulty pathways. And he believed the only way to fix a faulty pathway was to wipe it out. Cameron had a theory called psychic driving. He believed he could cure schizophrenia by erasing the patient's memory and driving a new personality into the empty void. But he needed money, massive amounts of money. His experiments were expensive. The Canadian government gave him some grants, but it wasn't enough. Then Sidney Gottlieb found him. The CIA saw Cameron's research papers. They saw a man who was trying to do exactly what they wanted, create a blank slate. They approached him through a front organization called the Society for the Investigation of Human Ecology. They offered him $60,000 a year. That is $500,000 today. They told him, do whatever you want, no oversight, no rules, just give us the results. Cameron turned the Allan Memorial Institute, a gloomy stone mansion on Mount Royal, into his personal dungeon. His patients were not spies. They were not enemies of the state. They were normal people. Housewives with postpartum blues, students with exam anxiety. They came to the great Dr. Cameron hoping for a cure. Instead, they became Subproject 68. Part 5. The Protocol of Pain. Let's walk through the procedure that Cameron developed. He called it the automated psychological process. It was a 3-stage descent into hell. Stage 1, the sleep room. Cameron believed that the conscious mind fights back. To reprogram the brain, he had to shut down the defenses. So he put his patients to sleep. Not for a night, not for a day. For months, he created a sleep cocktail, a mixture of thorazine, nembutal, seconal, and chlorpromazine. He injected them 3 times a day. Patients would sleep for 20 to 30 days straight. They were woken up only to be fed and taken to the toilet. They were zombies. They couldn't speak. They couldn't think. They lost all sense of time. Imagine waking up and thinking it is Tuesday, but the leaves outside have changed color because you have lost an entire season of your life. This broke the continuity of self. Stage 2. Depatterning the shock. Once the patient was sedated, Cameron began the destruction. He used electroconvulsive therapy, ECT. In normal psychiatry, a patient might receive one shock treatment a week. Cameron developed the Page-Russell method. He shocked his patients 2 or 3 times a day. He turned the voltage up to 40 times the normal power. The shocks were so violent that patients' spines would fracture from the muscular contractions. He shocked them until they regressed. He wanted them to forget. And they did. Nurses reported that grown women would wake up sucking their thumbs. They forgot how to walk. They forgot how to use a fork. They forgot their husbands' names. They were helpless infants in adult bodies. Cameron called this the blank slate. The person was gone. The hard drive was formatted. Stage 3. Psychic driving the rebuild. Now came the most dystopian part. Cameron believed he could write a new personality onto the blank slate. He took old football helmets and modified them. He installed speakers inside the ear cups. He strapped these helmets onto the heads of his comatose, regressed patients. He locked them in a dark room known as the isolation box. And he played a tape loop. The tape would repeat a single message hundreds of thousands of times. You are a bad mother. You are irresponsible. You are hostile. He believed he had to break them down completely with negative driving. Then, after weeks of insults, he would switch to positive driving. You are happy. You are confident. You love your life. The tapes played for 16 hours a day. If the patient tried to take the helmet off, their hands were tied. If they screamed, the volume went up. Cameron was trying to automate the human soul. Part 6. The VICTIMS, the human cost. Let's look at the people behind the numbers. Velma Orlikow. She was the wife of David Orlikow, a prominent Canadian politician. She checked in for mild depression. She spent 3 years in Cameron's care. When she came out, she couldn't read a book. The letters meant nothing to her. She couldn't cook a meal. She couldn't organize her thoughts. She spent the rest of her life in chronic pain, terrified of doctors. She had lost herself. Jean Charles Page, a young man who went to Cameron for anxiety. He was put in the sleep room for weeks. When he woke up, he didn't know who he was. He didn't recognize his parents. He had to relearn how to live from scratch. He described it later as having your soul raped. There was no physical scar, but the person he was before was murdered. Linda McDonald. She was admitted at age 26 for depression. Cameron subjected her to 102 electroshock treatments. She spent 86 days in a drug-induced coma. When she was discharged, she had complete retrograde amnesia. She didn't know her name. She didn't know her children. She didn't know how to read or write. She didn't even know what a toilet was. She was a newborn baby in a 26-year-old body. She had to relearn the entire world. And the cruel irony. Cameron considered her a success because she was no longer depressed. Of course she wasn't depressed. She didn't have a mind left to be depressed with. Part 7. The failure and the cover-up. The tragedy of MKUltra is not just the cruelty, it is the futility. It didn't work. Cameron destroyed minds, yes, but he couldn't rebuild them. He couldn't program a spy. He just created broken, confused, traumatized people. The CIA realized this in 1963. The psychic driving didn't create a Manchurian Candidate. It created vegetables. Sidney Gottlieb cut the funding. Cameron retired. The experiment stopped, but the secret remained. In 1973, the Watergate scandal hit. The government was under fire. CIA Director Richard Helms panicked. He knew that if MKUltra was discovered, it would destroy the agency. He issued a frantic order: destroy everything. Thousands of boxes of files were shredded. Tapes were burned. Transcripts were incinerated. Helms thought he had erased history, just like Cameron tried to erase minds. But he made a mistake. He missed one box. In 1977, a Freedom of Information Act request led to the discovery of a cache of financial records in a retired storage depot. These weren't operational files, they were budget reports. But they had the names: Dr. Cameron, Subproject 68, LSD, electroshock. The puzzle pieces came together. The victims, like Velma Orlikow, finally understood what had happened to them. They weren't failed patients, they were victims of a secret war. They sued the CIA. It was a David and Goliath battle. The government denied everything. They claimed national security. They claimed immunity. But the evidence was too strong. In 1988, the CIA finally agreed to a settlement. They paid $750,000 to 9 victims. Less than $100,000 per stolen life. Dr. Cameron was already dead. He died while mountain climbing, never facing justice for his crimes. Sidney Gottlieb testified before Congress, claiming he didn't remember the details. He walked away free. Part 8. The Modern Echo: Algorithmic Mind Control. You might be thinking, this is history, this is over. You are wrong. The goal of MKUltra, to bypass the critical mind and modify human behavior, never ended. It just changed platforms. Dr. Cameron used primitive tools: drugs, electricity. Today, the manipulators have precision instruments. They have the algorithm. Think about the structure of psychic driving. Step 1. Isolation. Social media isolates you in echo chambers. It cuts you off from dissenting opinions. It creates a digital sleep room where you only see what they want you to see. Step 2. Repetition. The tape loop is now the news feed. If you see the same headline, the same fear-mongering narrative, the same emotional trigger 500 times a day, it becomes your reality. You don't need a helmet with speakers. You hold the speaker in your hand. Step 3. Behavioral modification. They use variable reward schedules, dopamine hits from likes and shares, to train you like a lab rat. They nudge your voting, they nudge your spending, they nudge your anger. We are living in a massive, decentralized MKUltra experiment. The sleep cocktail is the endless scroll. The shock is the outrage bait. The psychic driving is the influencer telling you what to think. And just like the patients at the Allan Memorial Institute, we often don't realize we are being programmed until we wake up and realize we don't recognize ourselves anymore. Part 9. The Defense Protocol: Cognitive Sovereignty. So how do you defend your mind? How do you stop the tape loop? You need the Cognitive Sovereignty Protocol. Rule number 1. Pattern interruption. Brainwashing relies on unbroken repetition. You must deliberately break the loop. Do not consume the same information sources every day. Read things that make you uncomfortable. Listen to people you hate. Turn off your phone for 24 hours once a week. When you break the cycle, the programming weakens. Your critical thinking wakes up. Rule number 2. Guard the twilight state. Hypnosis works best when you are tired or emotional. Dr. Cameron kept his patients drowsy to bypass their defenses. When are you most vulnerable? Late at night, when you are doom-scrolling in bed. Your prefrontal cortex is tired, your guard is down. That is when the programming goes straight to your subconscious. Never consume high-stakes information after 10 p.m. Protect your twilight state. Rule number 3, the reality anchor. The victims of MKUltra lost their minds because they were cut off from the real world. To keep your sanity, you must anchor yourself in physical reality. Touch grass, build something with your hands, look into human eyes, not a screen. The digital world is a hallucination. The physical world is truth. If you feel your anxiety rising, if you feel the foliage of the internet taking over, disconnect. Go outside. Reality is the antidote to control. Dr. Ewen Cameron tried to play God. He tried to erase the human soul. But he failed. He proved that no matter how much you shock, drug, or torture a human being, there is a spark that cannot be extinguished. There is a core of self that fights back. Velma Orlikow fought back. Linda McDonald fought back. Now it is your turn. The war for your mind is happening right now. Do not let them erase you. This is Mysteria. Stay awake. And never let them put the helmet on you.